Okay, so we're going to continue with statistics, but this time it's going to be, instead of collecting two pieces of data and looking at the connection between both of them, like we were doing with scatter plots, it's just going to be collecting one number at a time. Like say we survey everyone and find out their shoe size here in class, and then we could do some statistics with that shoe size. But in order to do this, we want to figure out what a measure of center is. So the first thing we want to learn about is what a measure of center is. So let's suppose we take all the 8th graders at the school and we do a survey where we ask them what their shoe size is. We would get hundreds of numbers, right? And that's too much to handle. So what we do is we find a measure of center. And what a measure of center is, it's a way of summarizing data by providing a central point of the data. So we're going to write that down. It's a way of summarizing data. All right. Brittany, make sure you're writing this down. Well, do you have paper?
Nope.
I could lend you some. Give me a second. Oh, there you go. Okay. It's kind of like, in English class, you're often asked to read a passage, read something, and then summarize what you read. It's basically what we're doing here, but with numbers. Okay? And the thing is, there's 3 types of measure of center. So let's just point that out. There's 3 types. Take out your notebook. And depending on what we need it for, we'll use one or the other. But the most common one's the first one, the mean. We have the mean, or we could find the median. And also the mode, M-O-D-E. The 3 M's, mean, median, and mode. Okay. So today we're going to just concentrate on finding the mean and what the mean is all about. On a typical day, do you think you hear the word average at least once in a day? We throw around that word average a lot. Well, mathematically, the average is a mean. Okay, so we say the word average a lot because we're finding the mean. It means the same thing. So when we're finding the mean, we're finding the average of a set of data. I'm just curious, does anyone remember or know how to find the average of some numbers? Say I have 8 numbers, and I want to find the average of those numbers. Xavier. Yeah, basically that's it. You add up the numbers and divide them up by however many numbers. So if I have 8 numbers, I would divide by 8. If I had 15 numbers, I would divide by 15. Okay? So there's actually a formula for this. And the formula looks kind of advanced, but once you break it down and explain it, it's actually not that difficult. Okay, so this is called the mean formula. And it's just a shorthand way of saying what Xavier just told us. Okay, it looks like this. It's got an X, because we love symbols in math, and a bar above that. Okay, whenever you see X with a bar above it, it stands for the average. So X bar, or the average, equals, we usually have a fraction bar, and then the numerator for this fraction is another weird symbol. I bet you've never seen, or maybe you've seen and you didn't know what it meant. It's the Greek letter sigma. It looks like a sideways M. What that means in math is you're adding a set of things up. So sigma x, which means you're adding up a bunch of stuff, and then the denominator is n. So let's break down what this means. Go ahead and write it down. So the average is basically the sum of the numbers in the data. So let's write that down. The sum, what do we do when we find the sums, guys? Mathematically, what are we doing when we find the sum? You're adding. The sum of the numbers. That's what all of this means, the numerator. Just whatever numbers you have in your data, add them all up. And you divide them by n, and n represents how many numbers are in the data. So let's say the number of numbers in the data. Huh? Yeah, all the total of numbers. That's another one. I'm going to stick with the number of numbers. So it's not the actual numbers because you added those up here. Here you're just counting how many numbers you have. And basically that's how you find a mean or average. You're just adding up numbers and dividing by however many numbers you have. And of the 3 things that we find, mean, median, and mode, this one's probably the most used, it's most popular. That's why we can't go throughout a whole day. If you listen to the news or just listen to people talk, you'll hear someone say the average this, the average that. We throw that word around a lot because it's actually a very useful number. And here's why. Probably the most important fact about the average that you may or may not have known. The mean. And what's another name for the mean, guys? The mean or average is often called the fair share number. Fair share value, I'm going to call it. The fair share value. And that's the average. So imagine you and 4 of your friends, so it's 5 of you. You're going to go somewhere and you all want to have the same amount of money. Some have more, some have less. So you'll pool all your money together, right? And you divide it up evenly. And let's say if you divide it up evenly, with money, you can break it down in different denominations. If you break it up evenly, it turns out to be that everyone gets $12.85. What would that be as a decimal? $12.85. 12.85. Quite often, when you're working with averages, you are going to get decimal values. So, calculators will come in handy. All right. So let's go ahead and answer a couple questions where we're finding the mean. Okay. You guys ready? Here's number 1. Okay. And this is actually true because I took this data from my phone app for where I live. The daily high temperature so write this down for the next week is given below. What is the average high temperature for next week? So here's some data to work with. So we're going to start with Monday. Monday, the high temperature will be 55 degrees. Okay. Tuesday, the high temperature is going to be 57 degrees. Wednesday, 63. Thursday, 61. Friday, 55. Saturday, 54. And Sunday, 52. So those are the high temperatures for the next 7 days. Okay. Let's go ahead and find the average. We're going to use our formula. So to figure out the numerator, we have to add up all of our numbers. 55, 57, 63, 61, etc. Three, 4, 5, 6, 7. I got 7 numbers, so we're going to divide by 7.
not 57, it's 52.
Ooh, oh, 52. Thank you. Yeah, that would have thrown us off, wouldn't it? 52. Okay. So, looks like I have to add, right? Let's see. 55 plus 57 plus and I get a total of 397. And I have to divide that by 7. So let's do that next. Divide our answer by 7. And I'm going to just round it to the nearest tenth. So 1 decimal place. So the average temperature next week will be 56.7 degrees. Okay, so the average temperature is going to be chilly. 56.7 degrees. Any questions? Okay. So that's how you find the average. Add up your numbers, divide by the number of numbers you have. Have you guys ever used a frequency table? Well, let me show you one and then you'll see. So this will be, we're going to use one in our second example. So if you've ever called, well, when you're an adult, sometimes you got to call people to take care of things. And sometimes they take a while to answer the phone. So this is one of those situations. So when you're working for customer service, helping people out on the phone, you want to answer hopefully right away, or at least put them on hold so this is the situation. The table below, or let's just say the table shows the number of rings before an answer at a, let's say, T-Mobile store. Find the average number of rings before an answer at this store. Guess I don't need a, not really a question. Okay. So the way we're going to figure this out is we're going to use a frequency table. A frequency table is going to tell you how many times a number came up in the data. So in the first row, we're going to measure the number of rings. And in the second row, we're going to measure the frequency. Okay? So here we go. Let's say 4 rings. The number of times it took 4 rings before they answered was 2 times. 5 rings. That happened once, so we'll put a 1. 6 rings happened twice. 7 rings, it never rang 7 times before they answered, so we'll put a 0 there. 8 rings happened twice, and it took 9 rings once before they answered. Okay. So we have to add up all these numbers, right? You have to add the number of times it rang, 4 times, 5 times, etc. So let's start adding them up. How many times did it ring 4 times?
2.
2. So I'm going to put 4 plus 4 because I got to add it up twice. And how about 5?
1.
So we'll put it once. 6 happened twice, so we'll put a 6 plus 6. 7 never happened, so we won't include 7. How about 8?
2.
And then 9 happened once. Oh, okay, and that's a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 numbers. So let's figure out that total. 4 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 plus 6 plus 8 plus 8 plus 9. I get a total of 50. And that was basically, it was 8 calls. 50 rings total for all 8 of the calls. So now we're going to divide that by 8. And that gives us 6.25. So if you were to call T-Mobile needing help, about how many rings would you expect them to take before they'll answer? Yeah, about 6-ish, right? Somewhere between 6, 7, somewhere in there. Okay, that's the average number of rings they'll call before they answer. So the average was 6.25 rings. Remember, that's the equal share point. Okay. So today's activity is on Delta Math, and we're going to be finding averages. Okay. So go ahead and open up your Chromebooks.